Tradition 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. Unity changes us. When we rise above our differences and start to understand who we are, how we fit, and how much we have to offer the world, the degradation of addiction robs us of self-respect. The care and respect we show each other in Narcotics Anonymous reminds us of our value and our humanity. The experience of unity restores us to dignity. Our willingness to come together in unity and anonymity means we recognize that each of us matter. The basic text tells us in step 8, we want to look the world in the eye with neither aggression or fear. Then in chapter 9, the basic text mentions we are no longer need to make fools of ourselves by standing on non-existent virtues. These passages describe freedom from animosity. We feel dignity. We are not turned by a passing breeze, and we no longer need to defend ourselves from every shadow. We often say our unity is our strength, and it is true for us both as individuals and as a fellowship. We draw personal strength in a unity. We know that today we do not have to go at it alone. We walk together on this path, and the addict yet to come will follow in our footsteps. We draw strength, courage, and honor from being part of something so much greater than ourselves. In a unity is our bond with fellow addicts. Those who came before us, those that are here today, and those who have yet to find us. Our practice of unity makes room for all addicts to recover in NA. Tradition 1. Page 3. Our commitment to unity is essential to Narcotics Anonymous. Anonymity is a spiritual foundation. Unity is the practical framework that binds us together. We need each other, every one of us. Unity is an active force and a principle we practice. In unity, we find a safe place to surrender and the ability to carry our higher power's will beyond our wildest dreams. Unity is the key to our survival and the beginning of our miracle. Practicing unity can be as simple as a smile, but it can also be from one of the most difficult things we do. For the alienated, frightened, and resentful people, many of us were when we got here, our common welfare can be hard to imagine. Our personal recovery depends on a practice we may never have experienced. Practicing unity is an act of faith. Putting our common welfare first gives us a way out of the self-obsession at the core of our disease. We think of ourselves less and our fellows more. We contribute to NA unity. We set aside differences to help a newcomer. Friendships survive disagreements and grow stronger. We start to trust that NA is strong enough to hold us. We can be so afraid of getting it wrong that we hesitate to take any risk at all, and the fear can undermine us in our lives. Our groups and our efforts can carry the message. Recovery sometimes means making new mistakes instead of repeating old ones. There is no way of avoiding growing pains. While we always strive to do the right thing, our most powerful lessons can come through our mistakes if we are open to learning from them. The description of our symbol in the basic text explains that our outer circle represents a universal program that has room within it for all manifestations of the recovering person. Narcotics Anonymous offers hopes to the addict around the world. Regardless of any real imagined differences that might separate us, it can be easier to feel unity with addicts in faraway places than the people we know and serve with. Unity is not just a feeling, it is a decision that shapes our actions and attitudes. Word by word. Define, expand on, and clarify the words and phrases from this tradition, one at a time, in our relation to each other. For writing or discussing with a sponsor or other NA members. Example, welfare. Welfare is a word that is used more than it is understood. Welfare typically refers to our health, comfort, and well-being. Many definitions of this word also mention safety and happiness. When traditions, one suggests that our common welfare should come first, it is telling us that the well-being of the group should be more important than the desires of the individual. Together as a fellowship, we share a common responsibility for each other and for the fellowship that makes our personal recovery possible. Spiritual principles. Each tradition embodies a variety of spiritual principles. The list of principles and values below may be useful as we consider applications of this tradition and explore them in writing or discussion with a sponsor or other NA members. If other principles or values are not listed below seem relevant to you, include them as well. Unity, selflessness, hospitality, surrender, love, empathy, acceptance, anonymity, goodwill, commitment, safety. When we experience with a group, we all call it commitment. When we experience unity within ourselves, we call it integrity. Of course, this doesn't come automatically. For each example of unity begins with surrender. Personal recovery begins with surrender. For the first step, surrender to the first tradition, brings us to understand that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. The atmosphere of recovery helps us welcome newcomers, is made possible through unity. When we are in conflict with each other, when a meeting is full of tension and bitterness, it doesn't matter what we say, the message of hope won't get through. On the other hand, unity is a message in itself. When we walk into our first meeting and see addicts coming together in unity, the Spirit touches us even before the words get through. For members, Tradition 1 asks us to shift our perspective for the first time. We comes before me. The commitment in the beginning of a new freedom. We learn to let go. We start to see that the groups can be trusted to make decisions. There is a bridge to Tradition 1 from Step 12. Love and service are principles of each. When we practice these principles in all our affairs, unity, or the desire for unity, is a natural result. The community must be healthy for us to thrive, but we can manage to control it into well-being. Addicts learn through example and empathy. A healthy NA community has room for members of all different places in the journey. The work of the 12 steps is necessary to get our mess out of the way and clear a path to our hearts. But we can't wait until we finish the steps to start understanding the traditions. In so many ways, our relationships to the traditions begins the first time we walk through the door. The atmosphere of a meeting can carry a more powerful message than the words that are shared. Listening for a higher power working through each of us gives us access to solutions none of us had when we walked in the room. When we come together in unity, we are open to each other and the wisdom of a power greater than ourselves. Coming to terms with the first tradition can be challenging. We need each other desperately, and yet we are afraid. The reservation often comes from experiences of being hurt. We tend to react in disunifying ways to the possibility of being hurt. Our instincts is to meet disease with disease, but when we meet it with love and compassion instead, we can create an opportunity for recovery. Addiction separates us from others, and unity is an antidote for alienation. As our trust and fellowship grows, we can be less afraid. Unity of purpose keeps us together when feelings are pushing us toward the door. Staying through difficulty is a profound act of surrender. We each need the other more than we need our old beliefs. Unity is the first glimpse of our first glimpse out of self-obsession. It begins with the willingness to be honest that teaches us to listen and to open mind and open our hearts to those around us. We can genuinely pleased to see a former enemy seeking a new way of life in recovery, and even more amazed when that person helps us through a difficult situation. We feel immense joy at seeing the other addict begin to recover. One of the purest expressions of goodwill in NA is a heartfelt desire for the newcomer to have freedom. Sometimes it's more important than genuine hope for ourselves. When that desire takes a hold of us, we feel compelled to clear away any distractions between the newcomer and the message. Practicing these principles can lead us to a desire to learn more about other kinds of spiritual practice as well. Our history has many lessons, and research or study might be part of how we come to the understanding the traditions. But practicing the tradition requires that we understand them with heart as well as mind. We learn most about our principles by practicing conscious contact and open-mindedness. Our growing awareness is a source of wisdom. When we are rigid and closed-minded, we can miss the miracle because it doesn't look like we imagined it should. It can be easy to forget how we got to where we are today, both as individuals and by groups. Gratitude is a sense of wonder, change, and perception. Keeping the basics alive is one of the rewards of carrying the message. The gifts of service far outweigh the work. Our member best described how service can be helped to make unity a reality for him. At the end of my first meeting, I was standing around, not really knowing what to do or if I should come back. A woman asked me if I was new. When I said yes, She welcomed me and then asked me if I would empty the trash for the group. I came back every week and emptied the trash. I've been an NA member ever since. Being asked to serve helps us feel useful and viable to other members. It is easier to stay around when we feel useful. Participation is essential to unity. It is also how we start to feel like we belong. We talk a lot about service and responsibility, but it is also a tool. Serving in Narcotics Anonymous helps us internalize the first tradition. It teaches us how to live and how to work with others and how to carry our higher power's will, and often drives us to the steps. Freedom from active addiction comes long before we are free from fear, anger, regret that compels us. Long before we are free from that fear, anger, and regret, learning to act in the spirit of love and unity breaks us out of all those cages. Caring for our common welfare begins in service, but gradually affects all areas of our lives. Our relationships to the tradition shows in our behavior and translates directly into our lives outside of NA. In service communication, it is necessary for unity. And the same is true for our personal relationships. Learning to communicate effectively is one of the greatest gifts of involvement in NA service. It improves our ability to carry the message, but also changes our lives at work, at home, and in our daily interactions with others. Good communication is a result of unity and a necessary condition for it. If we all fail to communicate in our marriage, for example, we may soon find it difficult to remain married. When we consider the common welfare of our household, we can set aside immediate desires for the good of all. Surrender allows us to make peace with reality even when it is not going our way. When unity is our guiding principle, there are some arrangements we just don't need to have. Some arguments we just don't need to have. We can live with differences, but we trust the integrity of the bond. Questions for members. These questions below offer a way to begin and continue the process of writing, reflection, and discussing of the traditions with your sponsor or other NA members. In NA. 1. What does NA unity mean to me? How does my personal recovery depend upon it? 2. Does my actions match my belief about unity? How do I contribute to unity or disunity? 3. How does anonymity contribute to unity? How does practicing unity help me place principles before personalities? 4. What additional actions might I take to foster unity in personal recovery and in service and in social settings? 5. How do I place our common welfare first? How do I demonstrate a commitment to this? Where do I have room to grow? 6. What are my responsibilities as a member of Narcotics Anonymous? Do those responsibilities change over time? 7. How do I show my gratitude? Have I reached out to another addict today? Eight. How can I sense when my heart is open or closed to newcomers? What can I do to better help still suffering addicts? 9. Do my opinions about fellow members separate me from them or the group? 10. How am I of service to NA? What types of service work am I most comfortable with doing? What service would I like to take on? 11. How do the traditions help me understand anonymity? How does anonymity help me understand this tradition? How do I practice anonymity in terms of this tradition? 12. Describe any bridges between this tradition and one or more of the 12 steps. What do these bridges teach me about my recovery? 13. What more can I do to put the principles of this tradition into action? How would applying this tradition change my attitude and my actions? In all our affairs, how have I applied this tradition outside of NA? What else might the principles of this tradition guide my thinking or my action? 15. Outside of NA, what are some places that share common welfare with others? At work, with family, in my local or spiritual community? Where else? List the relationships and describe. How can or do I place common welfare first? 16. How does feeling accepted influence my attitude and actions? 17. How do I practice acceptance and tolerance affect my attitude and actions? 18. How can I seek unity in my relationships? What would change about my attitude and actions and my beliefs? 19. In what areas of my life might this tradition be useful? What other opportunities are there for me to seek unity? 4 groups. NA is a program of attraction, and unity is attractive. We feel unity in a group when we see members reaching out and sharing with goodwill. We receive the love of the group and the spirit in which it is given, even if we haven't experienced love before. We hear the message and begin to understand we are not unique and we are not alone. Feeling like we belong gives us hope. Love and humility in the group inspires freedom and security in the group's members. The group is at the heart of Narcotics Anonymous. Groups hold recovery meetings and guide our service efforts. In A groups, we hear the message, carry the message, create an atmosphere of recovery, and find a home. Serving, sharing, praying, and playing together, our relationships with the fellow addicts become intimate and important to us. A home group is not a place where we attend meetings or the only place we express our membership in NA. But it is a place where we attend meetings regularly, take responsibility for our well-being of the group, and find our voice, and make sure that the doors are open. When the group has an understanding of our traditions and the members are clear and focused, the message shines through. A clear NA message is a source of reflection of unity. NA language is not a dress code or a requirement for membership, but clarity helps everyone understand the message of Narcotics Anonymous. We use distinct language in NA, but we cannot expect people to know and understand this language. When we first walk through the door, being scolded or lectured rarely feels welcoming or helpful. The ability to say clearly and simply that what we mean in result of understanding, we are helping others learn how to share. Reinforcement is more important than enforcement. It demonstrates that we are listening, not just looking for an angle or an argument. When our divisions get the best of us, the message is lost. Even if we say all the right words, we need all the tools to foster unity. Our steps and traditions and concepts, as well as empathy, patience, and courage. One of the most important things we do in NA is listen. For the most of us, the experience of sharing and really being heard sets NA apart from anything we've experienced before. When we share in a meeting and in the room is quiet, attentive, and present to us, that is a priceless gift. Speaking the truth is useful. We start to develop a sense of purpose and value. Empathy allows us to recognize our place in the world. In business meetings too, listening is vital. Finding common ground takes talking and time. Some of us are more articulate than others. We work hard to hear each other and to help each other express ideas. We show patience, encouragement, and gratitude to our fellows for their involvement. And remember that no voice is greater than the other. We never know where the answers come from or what the solution we might find together. Even disagreements and personal conflicts can serve as a basis for a greater unity down the road. Service helps us feel like we belong. We have a place and a purpose. The experience can be humbling. Doing as a group asks rather than as we choose is a form of surrender. When it just plain feels like defeat, surrender requires a deeper trust. We act on faith that a higher power is still in charge and that the greater good will prevail. Consistency and continued unity are vital to our survival, but without rotation, we can risk being frozen in time. When one or fewer members dominate a group, it can be hard for others to find a way in. Domination and intimidation stifle the spirit of the group. There is a necessary give and take between the old-timers and the newcomers and the unseen. It is important to allow new thinking and new ideas into the group in order to expand our understanding and our ability to reach out. Each of us shares responsibility for our fellowship. When we take responsibility, NA starts to feel like it belongs to us. I was saying at the shelter I was staying at a shelter, and I went to this daytime meeting. The addicts there gave me an opportunity to make the coffee. I didn't have a house key or a car key, but I had the NA key. I didn't get there early and set up. I'd get there early and set up to perfection, and when I did that, I noticed it felt less like harm, and I noticed that I felt less like harming myself. One of the most important ways to demonstrate unity is through consistency. We keep our commitments, and it matters to the peoples around us. Meetings are reliable. They start and end on time. Services continue when trusted servants change. When there is a disruption, feelings can spiral out of control quickly. Inconsistency feels like disunity and often contributes to it. Remember that unity comes first and that it can help us work through conflict. Are we sliding Are we sliding into disunity? How can we settle this question without isolating members who disagree strongly? Just like members, groups can experience self-centeredness. When a group forgets its relationship to NA as a whole, it suffers, and the NA community suffers as well. One of the most destructive lies that we tell ourselves is that our actions don't affect those around us. NA groups don't come to compete with each other. We work together for the greater success for the greatest number. It is remarkable how often in our groups and in our lives, the lone voice is the one we most need to hear. Honoring and courage it takes to speak against the majority and gives serious consideration to the concerns raised doesn't just make us more inclusive, it also helps to ensure decisions consideration raised. The decisions we make are based in principle. Small changes that can bring us consensus are often the difference between a hasty decision and one that can last. It may be helpful to remember that what made us feel welcome and made us feel uneasy or alienated when we first came into the meetings. A meeting format is a vehicle for creating an atmosphere of recovery and establishing unity. The format can describe the meeting, tell the newcomer what is happening, and help the meeting run smoothly. Statements read in the format can make boundaries clear without being personal or accusatory. If the formats are too cluttered and with rules and instructions, they can overwhelm a meeting. On the other hand, carelessness and inattentive chairing can make a group feel unstable or unreliable. Mentorship can be as simple as ensuring that outgoing trusted servants stay on a few weeks after a new person is elected. And that time and attention can make all the difference in maintaining continued unity and an atmosphere of recovery in a group. Practicing unity and anonymity can be a struggle when the atmosphere of recovery is challenged. Personal conflicts between members, violence, and predatory behavior are real issues in some groups. The service pamphlets, disruptive and violent behavior, can be a useful resource, and so can other members. Confronting each other is part of how we help one another to recover. But it is a challenge to do this in a spirit of love and compassion. We address each other honestly and peacefully and give each other room to grow. A member shared unconditional love is not the same as unconditional acceptance. I don't have to like your behavior, but it doesn't mean we reject each other as human beings. Our common welfare means that each of us needs every one of us. Every addict deserves an opportunity to recover. Our practice of unity helps to ensure that that recovery is available to us all. Group inventory questions. The questions below offer a way to begin or continue a service decision or workshop focused on this tradition. 1. What is our common welfare as a group? How does unity enhance our primary purpose? 2. What does the newcomer see and hear in attending our meetings? Is this an inviting group to join, or are we exclusive and intimidating in some way? 3. Do we make an effort to make everyone feel welcome? How do we welcome newcomers? Who are we missing? And how can we include them? 4. How does sharing affect our group unity? Do we carry a clear message? How well do we listen to each other? 5. Does our group have a conscience, values, and a personality? How can we embrace our differences and still practice unity? What do we do when we disagree? 6. Are we aware of any challenges to our group unity? How can we better foster unity? 7. What is going on around us that affects our meeting? How can our group maintain an atmosphere of recovery when it is challenged? How do we address common challenges such as newcomers from a facility arriving by the busload? Helping addicts with young children hear the message when attending our meetings. Members are disruptive and deliberately disunifying. Members who are threatening, intimidating, or predatory. Members who feel threatened or afraid. Breakups or conflicts among members. Members who discriminate or who exploit the differences for their own ends. 8. In what ways does this group contribute to NA unity locally and beyond? Is there anything we are doing that may be disunifying? 9. Are we in communication with our local service bodies? How can we help to improve the flow of information? Do our members participate in service and communicate to the group about what's going on? 10. How does this tradition help us understand anonymity? How does anonymity help us understand this tradition? How do we practice anonymity in terms of this tradition? 11. Discuss any bridges between this tradition and other traditions. What do these bridges teach us about our group? 12. What more can we do to bring principles of this tradition into our group efforts? What could we do differently to better fulfill our primary purpose? In service. When we come together in service, we connect with each other in a vital way. Most of us feel better when we are productive and doing something together that helps an addict stay clean and gives us a sense of belonging. The friendships we develop in service are unlike any other in our lives, not because they are always easy or pleasant, but because we work hard, walk through our struggles, and solve problems together. In contributing to our common welfare, we find meaning and joy. In creative action, we find love and purpose. Our vision statement includes the hope that every addict will be able to hear the message and that every member has a chance to experience spiritual growth and fulfillment through service. We experience unity in service when we see our work as a part of a greater whole, in service to our primary purpose, and connected to our personal recovery. In whatever way we serve, our vision must be at the center. We must be so focused on a task that we neglect to reach out to members who might be willing or interested. Vision is important, and we must constantly adjust our focus, zooming in on our task at hand and pulling back to see how it fits in the larger frame. Our experience, strength, and hope is our message. We share how NA works in our lives. When we're just going through the motions, we can feel it, and so can the newcomer. A hospital's institutions and panel leader. said I saw it intensively in the HETI, someone who had shared a real struggle of staying clean, and everyone would connect. Another addict would share a bunch of cliches, and the whole room was watching the clock. Our common welfare depends on our willingness to be honest about our experiences, to share like our lives depend on it. That honesty extends to the rest of our communication as well. Communication problems often arise because we are offering incomplete information or we assume people aren't interested. Honesty is a commitment to reality. It can be hard to stay committed when reality is messy, complicated, or unpopular. Unity does not require uniformity, and it is often allowing others to do things in their own way that new answers and questions come to light. Conflict can be a creative force as well as a challenge. Active engagement sometimes helps sharpen our thinking and spark excitement. If service were easy, we wouldn't need so much literature on how to do it. Often we turn to the traditions when we want to be right about something, or more to the point, we want to prove someone else wrong. I would give what I thought was an expert opinion about every tradition, but over time I realized I was missing the point of the first, said one member. Learning to use our traditions as navigation system rather than a weapon is a shift for many of us. Making that shift has tremendous impact on the welfare of our community. Many struggles in service reflect challenges we deal with in our personal lives. There is freedom in knowing we don't have to be in charge all the time. Not one of us is personally capable of guiding the affairs of NA. To keep our common welfare first, we let go of the desire to own a service position or a particular task, and we look to the good of the whole. Selfless service is our deal, but we often struggle with our own beliefs and about our importance, our righteousness, or our need for approval. One tested servant remarked, "Every service meeting feels like one long 7-step workshop for me." Being right can be its own addiction. Although we depend on each other's experience and insight, a constant stream of suggestions and second guessing is a sign of self-obsession. May be a sign of self-obsession. A member shared, "I was chairing a convention and I thought my professional experience would be useful, and I asked all the subcommittee chairs for a budget. I took them home and corrected them all, and at the next meeting I returned them with the corrected copies to the subcommittee chairs. They were horrified and I felt humiliated for overstepping my duties. The committee was willing to work with me, and eventually I was able to make amends and regain their trust. We let each other do the work in our own ways and learn through it with loving support, clear guidelines, and trust. Trust doesn't mean we stop paying attention. We can help each other stay the course and still believe and share all the same good intentions, even if we have different ways of getting there. We often judge others by their actions while judging ourselves by our motives and intentions. Guidelines can keep us accountable without making it personal. Thinking about principles before acting is never a mistake, but we can think ourselves right into a corner. We can get lost in policy and procedure and not get very much done at all. Enthusiasm can be dangerous, and the rush to reach our goals. We sometimes resist group conscious or act impulsively. Experienced members have pointed out that nearly every early story about our traditions begins with "I had a great idea," or "we meant well, but then." When we work together as a committee or a workshop, we are accountable to others in the group and to the groups and to our higher power. And often there is others who are accountable to us. At times we can seem cumbersome or ineffective, but working together keeps us on track. NA service is never a solo effort. When we are physically alone, even when we are physically alone, we are not spiritually isolated. We are connected to something larger, to our fellow addicts, and are often willing to help if we are willing to ask. This is a we program, and we see it in action when we work together towards a goal. When we take the long view, we can trust that we are on a journey to a lesson. The outcome will speak for itself if we let it. A member shared, "Every year I made the same motion to eliminate the area's convention, and every year thousands of addicts showed up. Who was I to keep fighting it? Finally, it was time to let go." Many of us have shared the experience of carrying a conscience we did not agree with. It is a selfless act and a spiritual experience. When we can go out of our way to speak in a group or a service body, we begin to experience what it can be like to let a higher power work through us. We start to have faith that the right thing will happen, even when we are not sure what that is, and come to understand that what is best for everyone will be best for us as well. We learn to communicate in a way that is honest and authentic without being aggressive. We can be ourselves without feeling like ourselves are on the line. Workshop questions. The questions below offer a way to begin or continue a service discussion. 1. How do the services we carry out benefit our common welfare? In what ways do we contribute to a sense of unity, loyalty, and locally and beyond? 2. What responsibilities do our service body have? Who do we serve? Who are we accountable to? How do accountability and responsibility help us foster unity? 3. Does our NA community work together in the spirit of unity? How can we build or enhance a spirit of unity? 4. How do we recognize unity or disunity in our service body? How does disunity in NA affect us as a service body? What do we do about it? Do we do anything to acknowledge when we're doing well? 5. How does this tradition help us understand anonymity? How does anonymity help us understand this tradition? How do we practice anonymity in terms of this tradition? 6. Discuss the bridges between the traditions in one or more of the 12 concepts. What do these bridges teach us about our service efforts? 7. What more can we do to bring these principles of this tradition into our service efforts? What could we do differently to better carry out our services? The first tradition makes clear that we are to thrive as individuals, as groups, and as service committees. Our common welfare, the good of NA as a whole, must be the forefront of our consideration. Just as the description of the symbol in our basic text points out, there is room for universal program and all the manifestations of the recovering people. There is room for Narcotics Anonymous for many different ways to live out our principles, carry this message, and help NA grow and reach more addicts in more places. One size does not fit all, and unity does not equal uniformity. We don't have to do it like everyone else. Creative action of the Spirit takes many shapes and forms throughout our fellowship. Our personal recovery depends on NA unity. Our experience of unity in Narcotics Anonymous allows us to recover in an atmosphere of acceptance, freedom, and love. The freedom we gain as members of NA offer courage and patience, and courage to participate in the life and growth of our fellowship.